Smash Bash, a miniature competition that absolutely breathes creativity. It focuses on kit bashing, and since I'm mostly doing sculpting from scratch, I have only entered once. But this year the central theme is Battle Royale, and that basically means you can do whatever you want. So I am entering a fully sculpted piece. So for Smash Bash this year, I want to try and make something like this. Obviously, it's going to be very difficult to sculpt the magic effects, but I think I found a solution. I found one of these glass fiber lamps, and I'm gonna try and see if I can make it with that. I really want to use polymer clay to sculpt the base. The problem is that PVC melts at the same temperature as the polymer clay bakes. So I can't put this in the oven, and even if I could, there's very toxic fumes coming out of PVC, so definitely don't put this in the oven. To solve this issue, I am making a cardboard insert for the PVC tube, on top of which I can sculpt with polymer clay. I can bake this separately from the PVC tube, and when it's finished, I can glue it in place. The cardboard is also easy to cut, so I can make space for the electronics of the fiberglass lamp. And using more cardboard, the underlaying structure for the base is done. Alright, I covered the cardboard with a layer of polymer clay, and now I'm using a clay extruder to create each step. This is the easiest way to make all the steps the same size. It would be such a pain to sculpt them all separately. To sketch out the stonework, I decided to make it easy on myself, so I'm using the width of my ruler as the width of the stones. The stonework is obviously way too flat like this, so I need to make it more uneven. I am going for a ruined temple kind of vibe, so I can't have it be smooth like it is now. Another way to sell old stonework is with cracks. So I'm adding loads of those. I'm using a sharp tool to scratch the clay, and then I remove the leftover pieces with a brush. To save my progress on the base, I have baked it, and now I'm weathering the steps. With just a hobby knife, I'm chipping off parts of them. I think this looks pretty realistic because the texture of the chipped clay looks just like broken stones. To add some more interesting pieces to the base, I am adding a root growing up the stairs and a broken pillar. I am using a tentacle roller in the wrong direction to create this pattern. With this pillar baked, I can break it to create a realistic ruined column. And now it's time to sculpt the two characters on this diorama. The one on top of the stairs will be a wizard disintegrating a barbarian at the bottom of the stairs. I'm starting off with the barbarian, and I'm giving him a pose of absolute shock and pain. I also want to make his skin peel off in some places, showing muscles and bones underneath. Basically, what I do is I sculpt the exposed part first, and then I sculpt a thin border of skin around it. I think it looks pretty good. I feel like this scenery is almost done. Really happy with the pillar, how it turned out, and the guy who is going to be disintegrated. Obviously there's still huge gaps. When I glue this in place, I'm going to finish this with Milliput and be able to sand it smooth on the edges. And now I'm gonna focus some of my time on the wizard on top. And this is what the wizard looks like now. I was planning on giving him a pointy hat, but later I decided that it would hide his face, and like this you can clearly see it. I am trying something new to sculpt a cape that I think is pretty interesting. I found a bunch of brass sheets that I bent and cut into a crude shape. I think I can sculpt over this with polymer clay to add some more wrinkles in the fabric. I always have a lot of difficulty to sculpt capes because they need to be very thin, but this brass sheets make for a great thin base to sculpt onto. And now it is time to insert the fiberglass wires for the lighting. I honestly should have thought about this a lot earlier in the build because it's such a pain in the ass to get everything in the right place. I also want to make a couple of extra holes in the stone tiles for more wires to come out, but I'm afraid it's not going to be easy. But at least with the wires in place, I can now glue the sculpted base into the PVC tube and sculpt over the big gap. As I said earlier, I'm using milliput for this because it is very easy to sand smooth when it is cured. With the edges done, it's now time for painting. I airbrushed a zenithal highlight where I focused most of the white where the magic effect will hit the ground and the barbarian. And right now I'm painting a thin down oil paint over the whole base so that the highlight will still be visible. Honestly, this feels like a cheat code for painting large bases. I don't think I could have made this work with acrylic paint. I gave the two characters a quick and dirty base coating, and now it's time for a tedious part of this project. I need to connect the wires to the wizard's hand. Obviously, I can't just all glue them onto the same spot because it will be way too thick. My idea is to glue on 1 or 2 wires to the hands and then cut the others a bit shorter and connect them to the first wires. I hope this creates some sort of web of wires instead of one massive bundle. And here is the result. I think the wires turned out pretty good. In my original sketch, the magic wasn't as smooth as these wires, so I'm using a gel medium to add some texture to the magic effect. At this point in the build, I wanted to see what the diorama would look like with the lights turned on, and I came to the unfortunate realization that it wasn't strong enough. The only way to see some of the lights was in complete darkness, and you wouldn't even be able to see the rest of the diorama. So I basically spent a whole bunch of time on something that isn't even visible. I was obviously pretty bummed out because of this, but I didn't want to let the whole project go to waste. So I decided that I would try and paint over the magic and paint on an OSL effect. This was the first time I used my airbrush on a paint job that was basically already finished, which was super scary. I haven't been using my airbrush for very long, so my control over it is far from perfect. I sprayed on some white, and with a purple ink I gave everything some color. As a final touch, I painted this axe from some miniature I had laying around and glued it in place next to the barbarian. Now there is at least one part from an existing model, and therefore it is technically a kit bash, so I can't be disqualified from the competition. And here are some final shots of my entry for Smash Bash. Even though things didn't go according to plan, I am still very happy with how it turned out. I'm very curious to see other people's entries this year because the level of quality is always astounding. Thank you so much for watching to the end, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.